Do you still believe that my wife is in the next room?
Hey there, I hope you're having a good day. If you have the time, you can come listen to me rave about the 2024 movie Heretic. In this movie, we are graced by the wonderful performances of Hugh Grant as Mr. Reed, Chloe East as Sister Paxton, and Sophie Thatcher as Sister Barnes. This movie mainly only follows these three characters, and although it is an easy movie to summarize, it's actually quite a difficult movie to break down because of all the details that's within it. This movie is very dialogue heavy with only a few sets actually, and I really like that for a movie. I think it sets up a very interesting character study of religion, of all things. Before we get started on the review, there are a few things that I did learn about Mormonism before even watching this movie. One of the things that I learned is that for Mormon women, it's actually not as much pressure as it is for Mormon men to go on a mission. So, for these two characters, Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton, they must be quite devout in their faith for them to want to serve a mission. I believe for Mormon women, their goal is mostly to create a family, give birth, get married, all of that, as opposed to having their mission. I also learned that every 6 weeks or so, apparently they change the partner you're with within your mission. So unless you already have a close relationship with the person beforehand, you might not really get to know them that well. That probably explains why the both of them don't seem to know each other that much. The movie starts off with a dialogue between Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton. You can tell that both of them are very intellectually curious, and even though Sister Paxton actually appears to be more devout and conservative in her dress, it's very interesting that it's actually Sister Barnes who's reading the Book of Mormon in this scene. And it's Sister Paxton that's actually bringing up the inappropriate topics, such as with pornography, in this scene, as opposed to Sister Barnes, who seemingly is uncomfortable with the situation. I found this really interesting because both of them do engage within the conversation. Although Sister Barnes looks more uncomfortable, it's probably just because they don't know each other that well, not necessarily because she's uncomfortable with the situation and the topic at hand. Some of the next few scenes have them kind of going around and showing their dynamic with each other more so. They don't talk about their beliefs when they're going around town. They mostly talk about what's motivating them, such as getting more handsome husbands if they, work up the stairs a particular way. An interesting thing to me too is that Sister Paxton was depicted as saying, I already love them, when she sees a group of women on a street just having fun. And I find that that's actually not very typical in how we depict women of their age, 19, 20-year-olds. It's not very typical of them to just be already enamored by another group of women. Typically they're intimidated by them or they already dislike them. These group of women are not the best though, because they take a picture with Sister Paxton and then they pants her to show her magic underwear. Very weird. An interesting thing to me with that is that Sister Barnes didn't really comfort her. She was crying while they were walking their bikes, and I was surprised that she didn't really stop for a second and give her a hug or something like that and say, hey, I'm so sorry that that very embarrassing thing happened to you. They kind of just walk in silence. She does give her some words of encouragement after Sister Paxton is done crying, and she's like, you know what, people think we're weird. And Sister Barnes is like, no, you're awesome, don't worry about it. Which I expected her to do a little earlier, but maybe she needed a little motivation before she gives this woman some comfort. One of the really interesting things in this movie is the weather and the setting. As they're walking to Mr. Reed's house, the weather seems to drastically shift. When they were walking around on their mission, it looked like it was spring or something. Fall, maybe. As they get closer to Mr. Reed's house, it starts spitting rain, and then all of a sudden it's hailing or snowing. This might suggest that we should look at the weather more so as a literary device, a movie-lary device, as opposed to something that's meant to be taken literally, as in the weather was really nice and then all of a sudden it's really bad. It's probably also to depict that they are in danger and there's like an impending doom coming about or something like that. They knock on the door of Mr. Reed and he answers, holding a watering can. More on that later. The interesting thing is that right away the two sisters actually lie to him by saying that they were just in the area and they thought to stop by when in reality they were really aiming to see him. I also don't doubt that Mr. Reed is well aware that these people were probably aiming to go to his house, so he might already be aware of this lie to begin with. I was sitting there the first time watching it like, it's spitting rain, why don't you guys go inside? And then I realized, okay, these two sisters actually cannot be inside with a man unless there is another woman present. So they proceed to ask Mr. Reed if he has a female roommate or something like that. He says no female roommate, but he does have a soulmate. Is that good enough? He says that his wife is just in the back making some pie. This is comfortable enough for them. It might honestly be comfortable enough for me. If I was a missionary, I'd be like, okay, let me come in. On the second time watching, I noticed that he immediately shuts the door before he even says that there's metal in the walls and ceilings, so he's really in there for some entrapment. I also don't know if it's just me, but if someone says that there's metal in the walls and ceiling, I don't immediately go, okay, that means I have no phone signal. I kind of just think, okay, I guess that's cool. Maybe you like to reinforce your walls and your ceilings, sir. The sad thing is, I think these two were already doomed the second he shut the door, honestly. They say that she needs to be present in the room for them to start their little speech, so he goes ahead and says, okay, I'll go talk to her, she's in the back. They then are standing up and looking around at the decoration of the house. It's definitely a very interesting looking house. Not really creepy by any means to begin with, but it is interesting that he has like one window, a knit set, and one picture frame on the wall. It looks homey enough though. Also, interestingly, one of the only photos that he has is actually just him younger with the dog. So, no wife in sight. He comes back bringing refreshments, but no pie and no wife. He says that his wife is being shy. To me, this is actually the first time he's already testing them. I'm sure he's aware that a lot of Mormons are actually okay with drinking soda. They can't drink coffee, but other caffeinated drinks are actually fine. I believe it's more so related to hot drinks or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, to me, if they were allowed to drink the soda, which I think they are, it is mostly a test to see if these two sisters will drink something from a man they've never met in a way that they didn't see him prepare. Or maybe if he thought they weren't allowed to drink the soda, maybe he's testing to see if they're polite enough and are willing to disregard their faith just to be polite and take a sip of a drink that was offered to them. He's actually more so controlling the conversation. He asks them about their faith, their upbringing, all of that. Sister Paxton answers for the both of them and says that they grew up in the church, but Sister Barnes corrects her and says, nope, I'm from Philly, I didn't grow up in the church. She also drops the nugget that when her dad passed away, not specific amount of time before, that her and her mom actually were shopping around essentially for some churches to see if they're going to stick with the LDS. Mr. Reed seems to be quite fascinated with the fact of her dad's death or the fact that she was willing to shop around faith-wise. Because he's inquiring about her dad's death, there is like an awkward silence, and Sister Paxton breaks this by saying that she wants to be reincarnated as a butterfly if she dies. There's been some different interpretations as to what that can mean because Mormons don't typically believe in reincarnation. My read on the situation is that Sister Paxton, because she grew up in the church, might have a different relationship with her identity within the LDS church. I think because she grew up within it, it actually made her so that she's more open to other ideas from other religions because she doesn't see her faith having to be very strict with it as her identity. She probably sees her entire personhood as a Mormon identity because her family is in it and because she likely has ancestors within the church. She probably sees herself as deeply Mormon, regardless of whether or not there's some little details she doesn't necessarily agree with. Growing up within the church can create fundamentalism in some people, but it seems for Sister Paxton she has a very open mind and a very curious way about her. Sister Barnes, on the other hand, seems to have struggled with her faith before, especially because of the death of her dad, I'm assuming. So to her, her faith is definitely part of that Mormon identity, and especially because she doesn't have ancestry within the church. She probably believes that she has to be stricter with her faith in order to be considered a Mormon, probably because she's also faced some judgment and perhaps some rejection from people in the church. I've also learned that when it comes to Mormonism, there's a level of if you have the Mormon ancestors, they kind of value you more than if you're a recent convert. You're a real Mormon if you have your ancestors, all of that deeply within the church. This might explain why Sister Barnes has 8 or 9 baptisms as opposed to the 0 that Sister Paxton has. Sister Paxton sees herself as a Mormon, while Sister Barnes sees her faith as a Mormon. The sisters are already privy to the discomfort that this line of questioning he's been doing is giving them. He inquires about Joseph Smith's polygamy. Obviously, Hugh Grant in the situation is not unaware of the fact that he's an older man with 2 younger women. Bringing up polygamy really creates a lot of discomfort and tension within the conversation. Although everything he says about Joseph Smith is actually correct, I doubt that the sisters actually know as much detail as he might assume they do. I doubt the sisters know much about all the details within Joseph Smith's relationship because these people are not encouraged to learn about the bad things that Joseph Smith's got up to. Interestingly, when he can tell that they're uncomfortable, he actually likes to offer them some outs within the conversation. He likes to be like, okay, last thing, before you get going and we wrap this up, here's another question. But when it's the sisters that want to exit the conversation, he interrupts them and asks some kind of mundane question, unrelated to what they're talking about, in order to get them to feel comfortable again. When he does this, he asks something about fast food. What's your favorite fast food chain? Sister Paxton, being the more curious and bubbly one, answers this right away, naming a bunch of fast food chains, whatever. When they both agree that Wendy's is probably what they're gonna go with in terms of what the best one is, he says that he wants to find the Wendy of religion. That's what his goal was. He outlines how he studied religion, and for years on end, he was thinking about what the one true religion is. And he said, unfortunately, he didn't want to find it, but he did find the one true religion. This is when Sister Barnes does an absolute save and says, "Can we see your wife?" Then you all of a sudden realize, oh my god, this man is supposed to have a wife. Where's the wife? This is when he blows out the candle and he's like, alright, let me go get my wife, see what's going on there. When Mr. Reed was gone, Sister Barnes then turns around the candle and sees that it was a blueberry pie scented candle, which is really bad because they were discussing earlier about how the pie is blueberry pie. There being a blueberry scented candle can imply that there's no pie cooking. What they're smelling is just the candle. When Mr. Reed comes back, he takes the refreshments and all of that stuff. He says that his wife is ready, you just have to follow him along. This is when I would be like, no sir, let's stay right here. Why is your kitchen not visible? Why is there a dark hallway before I get to your kitchen? What's that about? Obviously, the girls are already sensing that this is a bad situation, so Sister Barnes, being the quick one on her feet, fakes a phone call. What I like about this movie is that very often the sisters do the right thing, because that really frustrates me in horror movies when people do the stupid things. Very often, these two sisters, they're really tapped in. In all reality, if I was in this situation, I would think that I was freaking out, because so far he hasn't done anything overtly weird that you could say, okay, this guy is really and truly bad news. So far, it's the feelings that he's giving them and his line of questioning being uncomfortable. But this is good enough for the two. They're like, okay, let's try to see if we can open the door. They then realize that, oh my god, we gave our coats to him when we entered the door. We don't have our coats. We can't get our bikes. Lest you forget that it's spitting rain and a storm is outside. They're both uncomfortable enough that they're like, you know what? We don't care. We can walk the 4 miles back to the church. No need for a coat. No need for the bikes. And they try to open the door. The door is not opening. It doesn't even seem like there's a visible lock on that side of the door, so they're really confused. One of the weird things during their conversation is that they actually noticed that the lights were on a timer or of some kind. Very old-timey kind of things. You can tell the nervousness bubbling in both of the sisters, but they don't want to freak out yet, so they're thinking, okay, should we ask him for help in this situation? Realistically, the both of them probably know he would have a reason as to why this door isn't opening, and he's likely not the person you want to ask for help in this situation. Because said lights are on a timer, the lights turn off, and our animal brains, we just start freaking out, so I can't blame them. They're like, you know what, let's go find Mr. Reed. They don't know how to turn on the lights, and good for me. I've seen enough horror movies. I've seen another set of lights with timers. I would know how to turn that light on. They then proceed down this dark hallway. I don't like dark hallways. See, I'm so paranoid. If this was me in real life and this is a dark hallway, I would be hugging the wall, my back to the wall, right? So no one can come up to me, sneak up on me or anything like that. No. Anyways, they get to a door, they open the door, Mr. Reed is there, oh my god, and his interior of this place looks like a church. Note, no wife, no pie, no kitchen in sight, just Mr. Reed in this church. God, I think the following scenes are actually so much better watched as they are narrated, so if you've never seen the movie, at least watch the scene when they're in the fake church within Mr. Reed's house. It's actually beautifully done. This is when I start to realize that, oh my god, I better slow down with my atheism before I turn out like Mr. Reed. Because, not gonna lie to you, I actually like the aesthetic of the fake church and the fact that there's a lot of religious memorabilia from all different religions all throughout time. I find that so cool. The sisters see their coats, right? They're eyeing the coats. He's like, yeah, go ahead, you're free to leave, go take your coats. They put on the coats, they realize, oh, the bike lock that Sister Barnes had, because she's the one who locked their bikes, is in Sister Paxton's coat. Weird. I think both of them are smart enough to realize, okay, yeah. God, the discomfort that they had in these scenes were palpable. I love it. The acting is so good, the directing is so good. They're still asking for the wife, you know, please, where's the wife? Can we just see her? Can you open the door? Anything at this point. And one of my favorite lines happens within the movie. He's about to go through one of the doors to ask his wife. He turns around and says, do you still believe my wife is in the next room? The way I would freak out if that was me, I would have jumped on the man really, really fast. He wouldn't have even seen it coming. The second he turned around, I would have jumped on him. But obviously these two sisters, they're probably also thinking, maybe we're freaking out, you know, he's done nothing. He's done some weird things, but he's done nothing overtly violent or anything like that to them. So maybe they're thinking, calm down, it'll be okay. He's already told them at this point that he cannot open the front door because apparently everything is on a timer in this house, and he accidentally forgot to set the timer when he opened the door so that it's set on, I guess, the longest setting or something like that, so that the door won't open till the morning. They're both like, pretty please, sir, can you open the door? And I just feel so bad for these two. He's like, no, if you want to leave my house, you must go through the back door. And now he's doing this really stupid atheist thing of like, didn't you see my house from the back outside? It's okay. And these two are like, we don't want to get turned around. Can you please just open the front door? And he's not budging. He then goes in on them because he's like, I know you lied. There's metals in the walls and ceilings. I told you that. Why would you fake a phone call? You can just, you know, leave whenever you want. And they're both like, okay, can we leave or what? What I think is really interesting about the situation is that when he brings up the fact that they've lied or something like that, it does seem like he's trying to even out the playing field. He's essentially trying to say, hey, we're on equal footing here. I've lied, you've lied, it's okay. We'll put it aside. Obviously ignoring the fact that they're in his domain and clearly his prisoners, and there's a very big power dynamic going on here. It's like he wants to see them crack, but he wants to do it slowly. He's doing small little cracks in their psyche before he really goes in and pounces on them, you know? Dear Lord, he goes full Reddit atheist after this and brings out Monopoly and goes in about iterations, about how Monopoly is an iteration of the landlord's game, and there's many different iterations of Monopoly, and how, oh my god, that's a lot like the monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Isn't that wonderful, you guys? So he brings up like music and Monopoly and all of that to essentially try to show that what had happened in the past is that there's always been ideas when it comes to religion, and we collected these stories, which is, you know, the Torah or the Pentateuch, and a lot of Christianity and Islam and later Judaism is based on those first formative kind of stories within the Torah. And that everything else is an iteration, the same way that the landlord's game essentially gave birth to Monopoly and all of its iterations. Obviously, there's holes in this. The fact that Monopoly doesn't give people the same feeling and wisdom and connection that religion does already makes it a non sequitur. These two are not equivalent, obviously. To an atheist like himself, and maybe to an atheist like me even, I could see his point because I don't have a faith and I don't have a relationship with these religions. But these two very clearly do. So to someone of faith who has experienced very different feelings than you have, obviously they're not going to see the iterations as anything other than conjecture. He's now written belief on one door and disbelief on the other door, and he says that one of those will lead to the outside of the house, and they should pick it depending on their faith. Sister Barnes pointed out a couple things wrong with what he's saying. Although the points aren't the best and the most salient, what I do agree with is the fact that there's not only belief and disbelief. There are levels to truth, and we would need to discuss and define what truth even means when it comes to religion. He's assuming that truth within religion means that this specific God exists, that everything about this book is true, or everything about the book is false. Whereas theologians, historians, they know that there's much more nuance within historical texts and holy texts, to the point where some parts of it could be considered historical and accurate, and some parts of it can be not. That's why we study the texts, so we can see which parts we can take quite seriously and which parts are more so supernatural and maybe hyperbolic. That being said, essentially, it's not just belief or disbelief. I don't think I fit neatly into those two things either, to be honest with you. But of course, because he is the god in this playing field, he has now given them only two choices, which means they need to make their choice. It's very interesting the way that the two react and how differently they react. Sister Paxton immediately goes, okay, this guy just went on a rant about being an atheist, essentially, and not believing in religion. So let's just go to the disbelief and say that I agree with you, sir. We don't believe anymore. Let's go. While Sister Barnes says, hey, since already this entire thing hinges on some very shoddy ground, we might as well be honest and let God lead us, essentially. Look, Sister Paxton, you still believe in God. I still believe in God. Let's go in the belief and let God take us there, protect us. Honestly, the two did what they could, the best they could within the situation they were in. I really did like that they both go through the same door, because realistically, even if you both don't agree with the same opinions, in this situation that you are in trouble, you should always stick together. They've both already seen that the two doors actually lead to basements at this point, and they're both like, this doesn't look like an exit. And Mr. Reed's like, hey, you told me you saw the back of my house. If you actually saw the back of my house, you would see that it overlooks a hill, so you actually need to go down in order to get out. So they go through the belief door. It's dark as hell, and Mr. Reed shuts the door behind them. What we see next is a very wet basement. It appears to be an amphitheater, and because of the storm and the rain, it is extremely damp inside, and it's leaking. Immediately, Sister Barnes hops to action. She's like, okay, this is what we're going to need to do. Every time he's saying something, make sure you go against him, because he actually stumbles on his words and he kind of freaks out a little bit when they try to go against him. Sister Barnes at this point is trying to get out through this one tiny window in the top, and they both notice that the window is actually barricaded, so there's not really a point. They can't really get out that way. Earlier in the scene, before they go down to the basement, we actually see the two sisters spot a letter opener, but it was Sister Barnes who took the letter opener, put it in her pocket. When they get to the damp amphitheater, Sister Barnes says to Sister Paxton, hey, he's watching me really closely. Take this, and when I say magic underwear, you go for the stab. Sister Paxton is like crying at this point. You know, they're both freaking out, but clearly they're trying to keep it together so they can get out of the situation. Unbeknownst to them, there's mics and speakers within this amphitheater, and more likely than not, Mr. Reed actually heard them say the thing about the magic underwear and the stabberoni, so plan's probably not gonna work. I'm also so curious as to how he mic'd up this basement well enough that when the sisters are like, you know, they're barely speaking, he can still hear them. I don't know what kind of amazing mics he has in this amphitheater, but I need some of those. He's playing creep over the speaker, and dear Lord, one of the scariest things in the movie happens. One door opens and a woman comes out with a veil and dirty clothes, and the woman very clearly is, let's just say, she appears to be near death. She might even be at death's door. She's bringing about a pie and she puts it on this wet table because the leak, and she just sets it down, and then she goes to another corner and kind of goes down and kneels and then like bends her back, and she's, I think, praying. Terrifying things. I found it so funny that when this woman walks out, Sister Barnes is like, "Mrs. Reed, is that you?" To be fair, a detail I noticed is that when he was actually on his way to ask his wife, he was going through the belief door. So I thought that was an important detail. I don't actually think it's an important detail, but that's interesting. He's playing a song by the Hollies up top, and then when they get to the amphitheater, he's playing Creep, you know, based on his iteration speech. This woman is doing this very weird prayer, and then through the speaker, you can hear Mr. Reed saying, "You are about to meet a prophet of God." The woman goes to the table, she's sitting down, she starts eating this pie, and Mr. Reed is saying that this pie essentially has poison in it, she's gonna die, come back to life, proving to them that this woman is in fact a prophet of God. So the woman eats the pie, the woman dies, face planting into the pie. Oh my god, that was... Mr. Reed then pressures them to go ahead and touch the woman, you know, check for her vitals, make sure she's really, really dead. This is when the doorbell rings, and then Mr. Reed then has to go ahead to the front and see who's at the door. An interesting thing is, what would he have done if there wasn't a doorbell? How would he have distracted the girls from the prophet, you know? I don't know how he would have done so without the doorbell. Anyways, the two girls go kind of up the stairs closer to when they entered, and they're trying to shout so that the person at the door can hear them. But Mr. Reed shuts the door. Not gonna work. Then they notice that there's actually a box of matches on the rug, and they're trying to pull the rug so that they can get to the matches because Sister Barnes wants to smoke out Mr. Reed. When the elder comes, he talks to Mr. Reed, and to be fair, Mr. Reed doesn't seem like a suspicious person at all, so he's not suspecting anything. He just leaves. He's not showing as much urgency as I would have had if two young women from my congregation just disappeared, but he then comes back a second time and you're like, yes, he noticed something. When in reality, he just wants to give a brochure of the LDS church. With all of that happening, though, the good thing is that they were successful in getting the matches, and now they're trying to light the speaker on fire. I don't even know exactly what they were trying to do. I think they're just corralling for things. It's very damp in there, so it wasn't even going to work to begin with. Sister Paxton notes that the woman's head seems to have moved from the last time they saw her, and Sister Barnes is like, please, let's just try to light this place on fire. Don't worry about that. Another terrifying moment happens of, you can see in the back shot that the woman isn't at the table anymore. And then the camera pans and Sister Paxton is crying because the woman is over her shoulder. I would have pissed myself. I'm so sorry. I don't know how Sister Paxton did it. I would have started crying. I would have vomited before the woman even vomited. It's too much. I'm going to read the exact words that the prophet said to Sister Paxton. The conductor says my name. White clouds, not heaven. They unplug my brain. It's not real. This is when Mr. Reed comes down with his little notepad and he's like, okay, tell me what you saw. What did you just witness? And they're scrambling. They're like not understanding the situation. You know, this is just a very overwhelming situation for them. Mr. Reed is like, no. This woman came back to life. It's a resurrection. It's a miracle. And Sister Barnes, being always quick on her feet, is like, no, it's not, because actually it's kind of more of like a near-death experience, because I've experienced that as well. She goes on into about how she got E. coli from Taco Bell, had a very near-death experience, also had a very similar vision to what it seemed like the prophet was describing. Very, very smart, these two, honestly. The goal, it seems, is to get the both of them to kill themselves, I guess. Mr. Reed is now trying to sow doubt between the two girls because he's talking about the match and the fire and saying that the fire is reacting differently to you two girls, so one of you is lying about something. I think he was trying to do this because Sister Barnes was offering more of a pushback than he expected, and because of that he wants to get them to distrust each other, essentially. He's now going on about how actually the both of you are allowed to leave, but also at the same time your choices did kind of lead you here, so all of it is actually kind of your fault. What I think Mr. Reed is trying to do here is actually trying to hone his skills of control. He wants to see what methods are the best at getting these two girls to not like each other, or getting these two girls to kind of do what he wants them to do. This is another scene that I think should be watched as opposed to narrated, but I'm going to narrate it anyways. They're both kind of circling Mr. Reed at this point, and Sister Barnes says the code word, magic underwear. And that means that Sister Paxton should go ahead for the stab, right? Unfortunately, what happens is Sister Barnes gets an Uno reverse and gets herself slit across the throat. Oh my god, I thought it was Sister Paxton who did it at first and freaked out. Sister Paxton then starts screaming and she runs as far away as she can, and honestly, I can't blame her. I don't know what I would have done. If this was a friend of mine, I would assume that I would have gone to them, try to, grab at the wound to try and, stop the bleeding, but she just runs away. Like I said, I can't blame her, but it's also probably because she's not as close to Sister Barnes as, actual friends are. This is when Sister Paxton decides to lock in, essentially. She's like, you know what, I'm gonna combat him at every moment. I'm actually gonna go against him. She comes down and she's like, please explain it to me, what's going on? And Mr. Reed is going on about a theory how Sister Barnes is actually an NPC and that's why she's not going to come back to life. It seems like he's grasping at straws, but my interpretation, honestly, is that he is so in control of the situation right now that he doesn't care. He's just trying to see how he can get this woman a crack. To be frank, though, in this context, a lot of these things could be believable, especially when you're under duress, and especially if you're already a person who believes in the supernatural. Some of these things could be believable, I suppose. Sister Paxton is going against them, very gently so still. He grabs what looks to be a metal implant from Sister Barnes's arm, and oh my god, stop touching her, but he grabs the implant and says to Sister Paxton that this is why she's not coming back to life. She's actually an NPC, look at this implant I found. I don't know if he just didn't expect Sister Paxton to know what it is. I wouldn't have known what it is, to be honest with you, but she knew that it was a birth control implant. And now he's trying to gaslight her, being like, well, Mormon missionaries don't have birth control implants. Huh. But obviously, to anyone with common sense, what's more likely, right? That she's an NPC or that's just another implant? This is when Sister Paxton cracks the code. It's actually been a body switching situation in which there's actually a woman who died, poor woman, eating the pie, and then another woman replaced her in some kind of way so that they can fake this resurrection narrative. Good on her for realizing that. I think I would have needed a couple hours to really come around and think about the situation. Anyway, she figures it out, realizes there's a latch on the floor, you can go all the way down. Mr. Reed says, don't go down unless you're ready to find the one true religion. Obviously, it wouldn't be a movie if she doesn't go down, so she goes down. There's bodies there, oh my god. She's looking around, she finds a door, she keeps going through doors. This is when we see that Mr. Reed has a very wet basement or something like that. Everything is wet. And he's looked into some Satanism, paganism, or many other ancient religions. These ones in this basement look a little bit more occult, a little bit more like witchcraft than normal religions. Anyways, she gets to the very last door. It has her bike lock on it, right? She has the key in her pocket, so she opens it, henceforth revealing women in cages. See, what I'm not understanding is why the room needs to be damp. Why is everything so damp in this house, Mr. Reed? He even has a little squirty thingy in the top. Maybe it's because this basement floor was supposed to be for plants. That's why there's misting going on. But I'm assuming you could just turn that off. Maybe that's just another way to demean the women. They're constantly moist and that's uncomfortable. The women look essentially identical. They're all on the brink of death. And he's been keeping them here in his basement. This is when Sister Paxton goes for the kill and activates her white woman tears in order to corral Mr. Reed into a state of pity, I guess. Mr. Reed then starts touching her. Oh my god, how uncomfortable. He starts touching her hair, whispering in her ear, very weird things. And then he says, magic underwear. And there's been some different interpretations of this as well. It's either that he's mocking her, repeating the code word that he knows she had with Sister Barnes, or maybe this is also him just saying, stab me if you can, if you dare. Either way, she does actually stab him in the throat. After stabbing Mr. Reed, she proceeds to run and bolt, and she reaches a room that appears to be an office. Even more religious memorabilia. Like I said, if Mr. Reed wasn't such a bad guy, my goodness, I really liked some of the places in this house, honestly. She sees a picture of Lucifer's Inferno, so I guess that clicks to her that maybe the only way to get out is down. She's also noticed that I guess some of the doors don't really budge, and so she tries to barricade the door that she just went through. She goes down to the basement again, and of course she gets stabbed. She gets stabbed in the stomach. She's holding her stomach. Mr. Reed is like, "Pray for us." And this scene made me cry. Like, this is when I started crying. This is a really beautiful scene. I think it's really powerful. She talks about how she says that she doesn't really believe that prayer works, but the beauty in it is that it makes you think about someone other than yourself. She then starts praying, and Mr. Reed is inching closer to her. You know, her stomach is bleeding, his throat is bleeding. He then does a Mother Mary kind of moment and leans on her, creepy and weirdly. She's still praying at this point, and then whack, comes Sister Barnes and whacks Mr. Reed with a plank that fell from the ceiling earlier. The thing is, Sister Barnes looks dead. Even after this amazing feat of life after death, she still appears to be dead. Like, she is dead behind the eyes. And a really beautiful scene ensues of Sister Paxton crying, and it almost looks like she's giving a Mormon blessing to Sister Barnes, and it's really cute. Sister Barnes is still dead. She goes up again to the office, and I guess now it's come to her that maybe there's a key hidden within this little figurine thing he has going on. I think she finds some kind of key because she's able to open a window and then get out of the house. The ending is ambiguous, and everyone has their own interpretation of it, because you could believe that she got out there, or you could believe that she just died. Now that we're done summarizing the movie, we're going to go into what I loved about this movie. This movie touched me in a way that I did not expect it to, really. One of the greatest overarching themes within this movie is the illusion of choice. The fact that a lot of religions make you think that you actually have a choice within the matter when you don't. An easy example of this is the fact that heaven and hell isn't really much of a choice, or the fact that if you're born into a religion, it's not really a choice whether or not you believe, because it's the only set of beliefs that you have. That's something that Mr. Reed tries his best to point out. And the reality of it is really nice to point these things out to people who are very adamant in their faith, opening someone's eyes to there being more than one possibility of faith, or there being a possibility of not having a faith at all, I think is really quite important. But obviously, the Reddit atheist that Mr. Reed is went above and beyond and did violence and harm among people to try and prove his point. Another important factor in this is the whiteness of the characters. Mormonism as a faith is very white. It's been racist in the past. They have made actual efforts to keep their religion mostly white. And in the past, a lot of the LDS Church actually believed that having darker skin is actually a curse, that when we get to heaven or the afterlife, that we'll actually get paler as a result of it. Of course, when they send missionaries, they're going to want to send a sample of the population that's going to seem the most unintimidating to people, hence why, these two young, pretty white girls are the missionaries going about their day, trying to convince people and evangelize them. They come across very unimposing, like they're not trying to force you into anything. Maybe they seem even more innocent, naive, things like that. And the fact that Mr. Reed is also a white man definitely brought them a different amount of comfort as it would have been if he wasn't white. I think the Mormon faith was kind of the perfect combination of all of the circumstances to get women like them at Mr. Reed's door, and that's the sad part of it. In all reality, if you are a Mormon missionary, whether or not you're a woman or a man, it is quite dangerous for you to be 19, 20 years old, knocking on people's door and just letting yourself inside their house. That's really quite dangerous. And there's been a decent amount of missionaries, especially female missionaries, who've spoken about how they've felt during these things. Of course, if you believe that Heavenly Father is looking after you, maybe you'll feel a little bit differently and think that you're protected, but in reality, Heavenly Father might not be there. All in all, Mr. Reed is kind of meant to be religion personified, or God personified. This is God in the way that Christians envision God, a father in the sky, a white man, a patriarch. And Mr. Reed on the outside offers the very same qualities. He has a mug that says hubby, implying that he has a wife. He has these knitting kits. His decoration seems very homey. He seems like a person who would be caring in nature. But obviously, as you go deeper into his house, you see more and more of the evil manifesting inside. Religion does very similar things. Making Mormonism an example, the missionaries won't tell you absolutely everything about what's going on in the Mormon church. For example, they won't tell you about the endowment ceremony because they know that that can make some people uncomfortable. They don't go in about how they have to wear a specific type of underwear. They don't talk much about the tithing of it all, right? The things that will make you uncomfortable, they don't give you right away. That also makes it so that if you do try and get baptized, it might not be fully consensual, essentially. Mr. Reed does much of the same, right? Him inviting him to his house, they're under false pretenses as to what the situation is going to be. He's saying that you chose to go inside my house, which means that everything that went on after the house, they chose. When in all reality, all of this is out of the ordinary, right? This is not things that normally happen to people. You don't get challenged on your religion when you're trying to evangelize. You don't get imprisoned by a person when you knock on their door. Obviously, not all religion manifests in violence, and not all religions need to manifest in violence, and Mr. Reed clearly is a violent, self-centered person. I think the difficulty of faith is when people start to become really, really sure that this is the only thing possible that could be true, that they close themselves off to any other possibility. And in a lot of ways, Mr. Reed has already done that to himself. Even though he doesn't believe in a deity necessarily, he believes in the idea of control being exactly what religion is. And because he believes in that, he's taking part in religion himself. He's made his entire house essentially mimic that of a church. He realized that what power religion gives to you, you can take advantage of yourself, especially if you come across as inviting enough, as nice enough. I think it's no coincidence that he speaks about Joseph Smith. In a lot of ways, they're very similar. The way that he victimizes women, Joseph Smith did very similar things. What Mr. Reed realized about Joseph Smith is that he doesn't have as much influence as that guy did. He can't just victimize all the women he wants to victimize. He has to do it in secret, unlike Joseph Smith. So in a lot of ways, he might even be envious of Joseph Smith. He wants that kind of power and control. He says that control is the one true religion, and I disagree with him on that. Control is his one true religion. I think religion, very similar to power, exposes, actually. If you are a controlling person in nature, you will try and control. What happens is that control is the vehicle in which religion is furthered. It's the vehicle that makes religion run. Because without control, people wouldn't feel enough pressure in order to take part in your church. If you gave someone an open-ended interpretation about the faith, if you told them, hey, maybe this is real, maybe this isn't real. Let's say with Mormonism, right? Joseph Smith said he translated these tablets. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. In reality, we've actually studied Egyptian hieroglyphics, and we know that he's not exactly saying what Joseph Smith said it said, right? But very often, evangelicals don't give you two sides of a story. They give you one specific story in order to get you to come to a faith. And because these people believe that it's for the good of other people, they're okay with giving these little white lies. And obviously, Mr. Reed finds that hypocritical, and in a lot of ways, I do too. But his reaction to that is, okay, they're lying, so I must lie back. But actually, I'm going to lie better. Which is not exactly the conclusion you want to come out of that. Another interesting thing that Mr. Reed tries to do is he tries to equalize their sins. And he does this with their lies. When they try to point out the fact that he's lying, or he's being weird, or he's being creepy, he bounces back with, okay, but you said that you saw the back of my house. You said you got a phone call when you didn't get a phone call. He tries to equalize sin the way that religions do when they say that all sin is equal, actually. So in reality, you can't judge anybody because all sin is equal. You must love the sinner, not the sin. That type of thing. Although I guess the message could be kind of cute, saying that, everyone kind of has equal say in forgiveness and equal opportunity to go to heaven. In reality, what that means is that every sin is equal, but our opinions of every sin is not the same, because some sins are seen as immoral in the eyes of a lot of people. For example, If you have a vice, say you're an alcoholic, or maybe you like to gamble, people are not going to view that the same as if you're gay. When in reality, one of those things actively harms a person, and one is just you acting in a way in accordance to your feelings. People, because of their own biases and opinions, already don't have the same view of sin. When Mr. Reed looked at religion, what he found is that men that look like him, act like him, and feel like him very often found themselves in power, and what he realized is that, oh, that means I myself can get that power. I should get that power. Whereas someone like me, when I studied religion, I found the wisdom and the beauty that the people saw, not necessarily the faith. I saw what people were seeing within these holy texts, but I didn't take it as, this is how people get control of other peoples. I should do that. Because I, in my character, do not want to take control of people. And if someone has a faith in which they're trying to spread, I suppose, and they're very open, and they're giving people genuine options, and they're really letting people weigh their options, you could say that person is not imposing as much control as most religious leaders. And that's very valuable. Religion doesn't have to be control. It's not the one true religion. And if you're an atheist, you might not even think there's a one true religion, right? Another thing I want to note is the sexism that's found within this movie. I don't think it's a coincidence that all of his victims are female. I think there's a very good reason that the directors chose that, and I think that's more realistic to real life. For Abrahamic religions that genuinely believe that Eve was made after Adam and stuff like that, I'm not shocked by sexism. I feel like it's a feature of the religion, because if you genuinely believe that Adam was made first and then Eve was made after, out of his rib, a part of that is the fact that man must serve God and woman must serve man. And that interpretation is honestly pretty consistent with what's in the Bible. Eve was made as a companion for Adam. Eve is found in Genesis 2, not in Genesis 1. With the contradiction between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 in the order of creation anyways, in Genesis 1, essentially, men and women were created all together and then kind of seemingly released into the world. And in Genesis 2, we meet Adam and then Eve, right? So in Genesis 2, Adam actually gets made first, and then God makes animals for him as his companions. And because none of the animals were suitable for Adam, he makes Eve, so that Adam can have a wife. I suppose a different interpretation of that could be that if a woman is your wife, then that person can serve you, as opposed to every single woman in this world serving every single man in this world. It doesn't really make that much of a distinction within the Bible, and if you read a lot of what's in the Old Testament, it's quite sexist. There's barely any women mentioned. Women's consent never matters. Women's opinions never matter on anything, so I'm not shocked by this. This might be a hot take, but I think the Adam and Eve story has caused so much damage to women. Genuinely, because if you digest that story as the real creation story of the universe, then you are justified in believing that, hey, okay, so men are, a little bit superior to women. I mean, God made men first or whatever. And the fact that I know that within the language of Hebrew that they spoke at the time, God as a noun is masculine. But the fact that God is categorized as masculine, and being a monotheistic religion, there are no other gods to look to. So this God is masculine and already created man first. It's like we really are putting men on a pedestal. So I'm not surprised that religion causes women to be subservient and makes women believe that they're less than men. And vice versa, makes men genuinely believe that they're above women, especially if that woman is your wife. There is no scientific justification for misogyny. A lot of it is religious and the stupid creation story, right? And it's the most universal bias that's found within the world. So to me, it's very clearly put by men for men, and women were not a part of the thinking process of this. So I'm not surprised at the very apparent misogyny that a person who studied religion and wants to emulate religion, such as Mr. Reed, shows with his actions. Of course, if you study religion and you want to control the way that religion does, you're going to end up acting the same way they do. Even the fact that he inadvertently killed the woman who's not a virgin first before the virgin woman, it's interesting to me. It might just be a coincidence, but it's interesting. Regardless, if you're a religious person, I highly, highly suggest that you actually look deep within your biases for any of these things, because wholeheartedly believing that women were made after men does damage your psyche, regardless of what gender you are. It's genuinely damaging to your psyche. The interesting thing is that there's actually a video, and I'll link it down below, that goes into how people in the biblical times genuinely understood male, female, gender. They didn't have any idea of sexual chromosomes. They didn't know any of those things. So to them, men are generally closer to God, and women are kind of just men, but not as good as men, which is why women are meant to serve men. They're seen as not as competent. They're not seen as trustworthy. Also, Eve did the first sin. Second created, first to sin. The funny thing in the Bible is that so much of the time, women just appear to up the story. They just appear to tempt their men to do something bad. So many women are just plot points to get men to sin. It's in Job. It's with Adam. It's with Abraham to some extent. Lot and his wife. Every wife is just a vehicle for sin. She's like a ticking time bomb. Either gonna get you to sin or her to sin, It's really stupid. I could go on for hours and hours about this movie, honestly, because I love studying religion, and I've come to a lot of conclusions myself that I definitely would not have if I just stayed an atheist because, I love science or whatever. When you are an atheist, via looking and studying at religion, I think you come to very different conclusions. Maybe you even see the beauty like I do, or maybe you see the control that Mr. Reed does, and that's what you think is the beauty within it. I think that the beauty within the religion is actually the humanity of the people creating these texts. The people writing them down do genuinely have a goal of trying to make the world a better place. Whether or not their methods are good, we could say that a lot of them do have a very nice goal of trying to get people together, trying to unify people, and able to get it so that the world can progress. That is a very nice goal to have. And obviously, because we're human, we're fallible to these things. When people start feeling power and feeling control, they lose themselves in the process. And if you're an evil person, you don't really care about losing yourself, right? To you, control is the goal. It's not to get people salvation. It's not to do these things. It is control. I think this movie is really beautiful and wonderful. If you haven't seen it and somehow you watched this whole video, thank you. But if you've seen it, I would love to know what you thought about the movie. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. If you're religious, that's great. If you're not religious, that's great. As long as you're educated and informed, you seek out the truth, and you use your brain and your critical thinking skills, and you keep yourself open to many different types of information. I think that's really the truth. That's as close to the truth as we can get as humans. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. Joseph Smith. Can't say his name.